What? You drunk?
Not true.
You know, there's just something special about that first game in a series. The innocent and unassuming beginning of something that in years to come will make its way into the pantheon of the video game gods. It's usually a little rough around the edges, but made with a lot of heart, and the first Witcher game is no exception to that rule. 10 years after crawling out from its inauspicious beginnings, it finds itself with an 86 out of 100 point average on Metacritic. So to figure out if it's overrated or not, we're first gonna rank the story, the characters, the music, the visuals, and the gameplay from the worst of the 5 to the best. And then we'll give our own overall score of the game at the end. Alright, let's do this. In last place are the visuals. I'm a little conflicted by putting the visuals in last place because I think CD Projekt Red actually might have deliberately made a lot of the stuff about their game look kinda gross in order to realistically capture that dreary middle-aged aesthetic of its people, places, and things. It's for sure where the rough edges around an aging game show up the most, at least. Just look at the people. It's really no wonder Geralt's such a babe magnet in this series, considering he's the only one that doesn't look like he has like 18 STDs caravanning around his face. Except Bruce Willis, he always looks good. To be serious though, I don't think the game is ugly at all. In fact, I'm pretty impressed by the scale of the environments and the attention to detail that makes the game feel pretty authentic at a ground level. But there's just kind of a general gray dullness that blankets everything, and the game never feels all that visually inviting or appealing. It's not heroically clean or idyllic or anything, it's mostly just dirty and depressing. Which I mean is pretty much what real life is like, am I right? In fourth place is the gameplay. I wouldn't say it's boring as much as it's maybe therapeutic is the word I'm looking for. I started to feel like a Zen master after a while, meditating quietly to the beautiful music as I ran back and forth several billions of times between objective points and clicking to the rhythm of the combat system. Speaking of the combat system, it's pretty stripped down and simplified, which I actually consider to be an okay thing in a game like this. But I also kind of found it interesting because of how ambitious the rest of the game seemed by comparison. Not everything needs to be super complicated. The game's loaded with quests, so there's pretty much always more to do as you try and tackle the main story missions. Along his way, Geralt will run into people who need help in their own, often sexual, ways, and Geralt is most of the time more than happy to oblige. Sexually. Nice. And all the smaller mechanics you can busy yourself with help the game feel well paced, because you only have to take the time to do the stuff that you really want to. Except running. You will always have to run so freaking much. It's kinda too bad, because a lot of times my desire to not have to run back and forth outweighed my desire to complete a lot of the optional quests, even though a lot of them seemed legitimately interesting. It started to kinda feel like a personal attack, like the game knew I didn't have anything better to do with my time. So disrespectful, but also so true. There's also a slew of boring kill X number of enemy quests, but with an even more annoying hurdle thrown in because you can't even do a lot of these stupid missions without studying up on the enemy you're supposed to be killing from a bafflingly expensive or hard to find book so that you can identify the right body part to harvest. Look, I don't need to know the more profound physiological intricacies of a goblin to harvest its dick. It's obvious where it's gonna be, Geralt. His amnesia must have made him forget to be smart. Fourth place does feel right for the gameplay though. Third place goes to the music, and I hope the way I'm about to explain why I like it so much doesn't make me sound like a huge dump. It's like, the music makes me feel like I'm forgetting all of these important memories, but the profound sorrow of a forgotten past that isn't even mine is still making me feel all this sadness. Does that make sense at all? It's almost like the soundtrack is a storytelling device itself, because it makes me want to find out what happened to Geralt before the beginning of the game to cause all of this innate suffering, which is probably exactly how Geralt's feeling himself. I gotta say too how much I love that the tracks incorporate simple refrains and motifs that get stuck in my head. I can hum from memory so many little bits of melody that line the soundtrack, but they never become overbearing or overly repetitive. And as much as I do love the heavier and pounding tracks that get me all geared up for gathering goblin dicks, I found myself just absolutely loving the more serene and softer tunes. In second place is the story. So in the beginning, Geralt finds himself alive and without any memories in a world that's pretty sure he's dead as a doornail, as there were a lot of first-hand witnesses that saw him get killed to death, including friends and probably multiple lovers. And just like Geralt's missing his memories, we're also thrown into the game without knowing much of the context of what's going on. But while it's a bit disorienting at the start, you can quickly feel the history of the world brought to life as Geralt gets pulled along by the narrative flow. Amnesia is pretty much a played out cliche at this point, and it rubs me in all sorts of wrong places, but it kinda works okay here. The idea of Geralt having to make snap decisions and judgment calls is pretty cool, because without memories he isn't bound to his past alliances or choices anymore. So instead, we as the players are the ones who dictate where Geralt's moral compass lies, and having the game branch out in so many surprisingly different ways because of my own decisions made it feel way more personally engaging. And the episodic nature of the story ended up being just as cool as the overarching plot was to me. Running, a lot of running around helping locals, slaying problematic monsters, and living out the daily life of a Witcher gives the story kind of an authentic texture. Like I'm never in a hurry to do any one particular thing, and could let the world play itself out around me and let me react however I want it to. That's pretty neat.
How neat is that? That's pretty neat.
First place goes to the characters. After hearing so much about Geralt, I kind of imagined a sort of brooding, troubled anti-hero type of guy, but he actually ended up being way more relatable than I expected. He hunts mystical beasts and has tons of sex with beautiful women of varying species at the drop of a hat for their collectible trading cards. Wow, that's just like me. But what I actually mean is that Geralt has a hard time finding sexual encounters without using a comprehensive and step-by-step strategy guide. Okay, what I really mean is that Geralt wasn't too far on either end of any kind of spectrum. And that's what really made the game work for me so well, because I never felt his actions or reactions were outside the realm of a normal person's disposition. Sure, he's superhuman, but he still struggles with people and decisions and life in general, but in ways that never make him out to be above the mortal plane of existence. And Geralt's little circle of friends always make for a good time, so I really wish there were more scenes with all of them hanging out together. Their supportive and drunken conversations were some of the highlights of the game for me, and they made for a great balance of lighthearted moments, but also a vehicle to drive the heavier points of the story forward on a closer and more personal level for Geralt. He isn't quite the lone wolf silent type the game would have you believe. He has trusted friends who all have each other's backs. That's pretty cool. The Witcher is a title that was ambitious probably beyond its own means, but got closer to being what it wanted to be than it really had any right to. It has its problems like any aging game does, but carries itself so well that it kinda brainwashes you into forgetting about them, or at least convinces you that the problems aren't really that big of a deal anyways. I really do think this game's worth playing, and I hope I was able to communicate at least a few of the reasons why I think so. It's clunky and sometimes uninviting, but it has so much to offer, especially for anyone up for a quick visit into an incredibly interesting world. Our final score ended up being an 82, which is a few points below the average we found online, so maybe it's a tiny bit overrated, but I'm still really glad that I played it, and I think anybody else would be too. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Tell us how you'd rank the different parts of the game or the game overall. We'd like to know. Also, you can follow us on Twitch and talk with us more about it or anything else that you want. And as always, feel free to suggest games that you think we should cover in the future. See you next time.